So as you heard, o Ekela Kaniaupio-Crozier ko uinoa, o Antonia laua o Kuanoni Kaniaupio ko upo i Makua, no halawa uka o Ahu Mahiau, o ka upo i kupuna o Rebecca Kua, o Kaimi Kaniaupio, o Eto Kauhiwai Keaunui, a o Edward Namohala Crawford ko upo e kupuna. No maunawili mai ka au ku upapa, no hauula mai ka au ku mama. O ke kupuna o ku umaku hine no eva o ahu mai oia ka oia ke ali'i nui o eva I manawa o ke au nui ke keiki a maweke. Mahalo.
Mahalo kumu. O anu Getgen ko uinoa no kula maui mai iau. O Charlene a me Russ ku umau makua. O Mildred Lee Annie a Keely ku mau kupuna. Mahalo nui for joining us today for our session. Kumu Ekela and I have had the privilege of working together for a little over 3 years now. We started our first Ola Loa series in 2020. It was the ask for Ola Loa was initially a response to COVID and being in the pandemic. Kamehameha Schools Maui wanted to create a type of trauma-informed training for our kumu to help prepare them as we received our haumana back that first semester. And we knew that if we were going to engage our kumu in these types of conversations, that we needed to do it in a way that was culturally grounded. And when we look at things like trauma, we felt like we couldn't do that on a surface level. We needed to dive deeper and look to our Ike Kupuna for that. So that's how Olaloa was started, and it has very much evolved from that. We've created various different sessions for Kumu, for social service providers, and most recently, we've been doing trainings in our community for those who are supporting the Lahaina community. So we've been doing some trainings for some Department of Defense mental health providers that are coming in, and they've been, gracious enough to allow us time with those providers who are not from here to gain some knowledge about Hawaii and Ike Hawaii before they go out and work with our community.
Well, let's tell the story. Because one day I tell Anu, my voice is really whack today, and I'm just really trying. I'm right on the edge of no voice. But one day I tell her, all these people coming to Maui, working with our people, they don't know. They don't know us. They don't know anything about us. They don't know how we think, how we act. They need help. And I would really like for them to have a cultural training. She goes, right? Yeah, right. A week later, she calls me. She goes, oh, you're not going to believe this. I go, what? She goes, your wish came true. I was like, oh, my gosh, who are we training? She goes, Department of Defense. I was like, all up, oh, my gosh, bring them on, bring them on. So from there, we've had like several meetings with them to give them cultural training. And one of the things that they mentioned was they never had cultural training in any space that they've ever gone into. So they've been into, hi, darling. I see everybody I know inside here. But they've gone to like Paradise and Katrina and these different disaster areas, just cold, just walk in and do their thing the way they do their thing. But never thought that they should know the people and the way the people feel. And in a place like Lahaina, that's super important. But in a place like Hawaii, it's mandatory that you know us before you step into the space. So I just wanted to drop that one out.
Mahalo kumu. So Olaloa, it's not just for Hawaiians, but it is for everyone who engages with Hawaiian ohana and keiki. We feel that Olaloa is developing the capacity to do the emotional labor to understand the indigenous perspective. which is so crucial to working with our native Hawaiian kanaka. Our sessions that we do, and we're going to do a session with you all today, it's a little bit different. So we're not just going to be talking at you. It's a different type of training. We often talk about there's two different types of knowledge, right? There's po'o knowledge, which is often content-based, and then there's na'au knowledge. And so our olaloa sessions are based on na'au knowledge and activating those parts within ourselves so that we can connect to them for ourselves and that we can also connect to one another and the individuals that we serve. So we say, are you ready to turn everything upside down so we can be right side up? And so with that being said, I'm going to pass it to Kumu.
Thank you. So, one of the main reasons we do this work is because we know that oftentimes we're called to come into spaces with Hawaiian people, Hawaiian children, Hawaiian families. And sometimes we don't know what that means. And it doesn't matter whether you're Hawaiian or you're not Hawaiian. Some of these things just don't come to us naturally, especially in the world we're in today, where we're so influenced by social media, by everybody else coming into Hawaii. And so what we try to do is ground people into your stories and where you align with us as Hawaiians and where the rub is. And sometimes there's even a rub between Hawaiians and Hawaiians because we think differently, we come from different places, and part of the pilikia is that they labeled us as Hawaiians. And so, I come from Halawa Heights. Anu comes from Maui. Just because we both Hawaiian doesn't mean that we think exactly the same. Our environments have shaped us differently, our places have. So we got to talk starting about what are our stories and how do we bring them into the space comfortably, without bias, with an understanding of who we are and who the people are that we're serving. So we're going to start off with a couple of questions. And the first question,
Sorry to
what color am I? Is that time?
No.
Okay.
It is
You
time,
want
but I
me?
just wanted to make reference to our kupuna that are up here on the screen.
Yes.
Yep.
We always say ola kainoa. You've probably heard this olelo no eo. The name lives. Why is that important? Because it's important because we are here because they were here. And that's the first part of understanding who we are as Kanaka, is that we don't get to just kind of say, poof, here we are, and that's it. Here we are, and here's a whole lot of people behind us. And so many of us carry their names. So in my case, you'll see my name, Jerry Ann. My brother was given the kuleana to name me, so he named me after himself. And so his name is Jeremiah. My mother's name is Antonia. So he put the two names together and was very proud that he came up with this. And people like to tease him. They'll say, like, oh, Jerry Ann. But that's my name. If you call me that, I know your family. Ekela, obviously everyone knows. But that name comes from this woman right here who is the love of my life. She's Ethel Kauhi Vai Keonui. And because she couldn't give me her middle name, her Hawaiian name, I got her English name. No, tell anybody, because I tell people that Ekela means excellent. Which it does. All Hawaiian language people in here know Ekela means excellent. Okay, so that's really her name. And I was like, oh, and there's 3 of us named that for her. And we're all like, shucks, Eto. When people ask, that's such a beautiful name. What does it mean? Excellent. And then Kaniaupio, my father's name, and Crozier is my married name. Okay.
So my Vaianuhea Meleanali Getgen. The kupuna that I have up here is my grandma Annie Aki. She is the older lady in the blue. My ohana Hawaii is from Pahala on Hawaii Island, and Lee is Inoa ohana that is passed down to not every girl in our family, but most of the girls in our family carry the Lee name after my great grandma Annie. So I am a Lee. My youngest daughter, Ekela, her middle name is Lee after my grandma Annie as well.
Okay. Now we go to the 2 questions. Hiki. No hea mai oe. and Navai Oi. Many of us have heard this question, Nohea Mai Oi, and typically it means, where are you from? But literally it asks you, where do you belong? Where do you belong? Which is a very different question. If you ask me where I'm from, well, I'm from Halavauka o Ahu. But if you ask me where I belong, I always say it's wherever my grandmother was. And my grandmother was in church all the time. So I belong to the church. I belong to Kamakua Maolo on 632 Mokawea Street because it's there that I really learned, really shaped my beliefs and my understanding of the world. And so that's my answer for where do I belong. Who do I belong to? That lady you saw. I belong to her in every way. When I think of the way I would handle a situation, I think about her. How would she have handled it? Pule, guarantee. Pule would be the first thing on her list. And then second, pulanyana au. And so we ask you these questions too. Where do you belong and who do you belong to? And so you might want to take a mental note of that because we're going to get to that soon. It can be a difficult question when you feel like you don't belong. And we've been in situations where we offer this question and people will say, you really made me have to think. And what's interesting is just recently in one of our DOD trainings, one of the women said, I'm Irish, I have red hair, and I have the freckles. I look Irish. I know I'm Irish, but I don't feel like I belong anywhere. Broke my heart because it's a hard thing, but she came to terms with it because she realized that part of the reason why she went into this work of social work was because of having that feeling of wanting people to know how to belong to something, giving people a place to belong to. So you think about that. What's your answer to those two questions? The way we do Olaloa in the trainings that we've had is to always have an Ike Hawaii piece that grounds us and makes us and gives us an opportunity to deep dive. And so today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the ahupua'a. So perhaps you've seen this picture before. Kamehameha Schools made this poster. They didn't realize how much we were going to use the poster. It became like the background for my Zoom, everything. Okay. But this is an ahupua'a, and many of you probably know that the ahupua'a is a land division, but it goes from the Pai'aina, right? All of the moku, the islands that are in this chain of islands, the Pai'aina, then it comes down to Amokupuni, right? The island. And then the island is divided up into moku, right? Larger districts. And within that moku is the ahupua'a, right, which is a smaller district. Typically it goes from mountain, Mauka to Makai, right? You notice somebody asked me, how come don't go Makai to Mauka? I was like, are you dumb? Like, you ever saw water go this way? I was like, what? But anyway, always Mauka to Makai. Hello, Mauka to Makai. Okay. Not Makai to Mauka. Why can't it? I don't know what world they live in. But yeah, Mauka to Makai, because the water flow down. Okay. In an ahupua'a, the majority of ahupua'a will have a waterway in it. That's the main part, right? That's the lifeline of the ahupua'a. Without it, it's hard to sustain a living space without vai. So we know that vai is super important to our people, right? So important that the word for wealthy and rich is vai vai, right? A reduplication of the word water tells us, wow, water must be important, right? Because of that, there comes along with that this idea of kulana and kuleana. Everybody say kulana, kuleana. Don't forget, I'm a language teacher, so I make you say things over and over until, Okay, so kulana, the role or position that you hold, the kuleana, the responsibility, but not just responsibility. I say this all the time. When we hear in English the word responsibility, our shoulders get heavy. Like, oh, what I gotta do. But in Hawaiian, the kuleana lifts your shoulders because you have a right and a privilege to this. How cool is that? That's the kind of people we belong to as Hawaiians, as Kanaka. They don't look at things like, oh my gosh, I gotta wash the dishes. It is your right and your privilege to wash those dishes. You know, my father used to tell me that all the time, oh, I don't like clean the yard. It is your right and your privilege to have a yard, period. So the kuleana in Hawaiian has a very different perspective, right, for us. So this waterway that's going all the way through the ahupua'a, right, has to be maintained. So whatever your role is within that ahupua'a, you still have a kuleana to the vai that flows through the ahupua'a. You have to make sure that your part of it is clean, is ma'e, it's able to flow constantly. Because if you don't have good, cool running water through your ahupua'a, what happens to your kalo? Comes loli loli. I heard that word, maikai. That's right. That's what happens. You know what loli loli is? When your kalo comes spongy. Yeah? And you can tell when you look at a kalo, right? And you cut it, lengthwise, and you look inside. Well, how the water was. If it's nice all the way through, oh, good water all the way. But if it has these lines in it, you can tell where the water wasn't flowing properly. Whose kuleana is that? Not just the mahi'ai, not just the farmer. It's everybody along that waterway, keeping it clean and keeping it flowing. So that kuleana falls upon us when the konohiki comes and he checks, you're not taking care of your water. You're not taking care of your area. They shut your section off. You don't get water. And when I first heard my mother tell me this story, I thought, well, it's kind of harsh, yeah? She goes, no, that teaches us discipline and the responsibility we have to each other. You see, right there we begin to learn that Hawaiians, we don't look out for ourselves. This world today is telling us, it's all about you, babe. It's all about you, what you can be and all you can be. But for us as Hawaiians, that's a big rub against what we believe, because we believe that we take care of each other. We're here to malama. Aloha ke kahi. And I've been saying this, and I know that there are people who have been pushing back, but this whole thing about self-care, self-love, we wouldn't have to worry about that if we all took care of each other, because somebody's going to love me. Somebody's going to care about me. Look, I got the piano bench. That's sisters who care, right? I don't have to go out there look for one chair. How about a piano bench? I can do that, okay? Right? If we all just took care of each other, if we all just took notice of somebody's need, we would be so much better. But we spend so much time thinking about us. So that's one of the beautiful things we learned about living in an ahupua'a. You know what? Come, get plenty empty seats. Hele mai. Why you guys gotta pay for standing room? Because these guys get free seats. Yeah, hele mai. We're gonna hold on until you all get a noho. Yeah. What school is this? Oh, I just thought I'd let you say it loud. Lahaina Luna. How about an exam for our brothers and sisters who have to travel all the way from Lahaina? Maikai. Oh, how olivo ike oko. Mai hopo po kalohi maupo po yamako. Okay, so this is where we're at. Think about your kulana today. And this is kind of interesting for us because this is a very mixed group. Typically, we talk to all social workers. We talk to all mental health workers. Talk to all kumu. Today, we get all kinds of people inside here. So we need you to think about the kulana that you hold. Many of us wear several hats, right? I wear choke hats, okay? I wear my mama hat, my honey hat, which is my tutu hat, which I wore first thing this morning when I opened my eyes, crawling into bed. It's so the best. Yeah, when more open it, they crawl inside and they're like, honey, can I hold you? Like, oh yeah, you can hold me. I don't want to leave you. That's my honey hat. And then there's my kumu hat. And then there's my hopekahu hat. And then there's my hoa hat, right? My friend hat, my sister hat, my daughter hat, all of that. So think about the different kulana that you hold and the different kuleana that you hold, because I want you to think about this. Your kulana and kuleana, there's something about in all of those spaces that you show up the same because of where you belong and who you belong to. So my point there is, when I wear my hopekahu hat, my mama hat, my honey hat, my daughter hat, my sister hat, my friend hat, Ekela shows up because I'm bringing in the church and I'm bringing in my grandma because she's a part of me. She's who I belong to. So you think about that. Hikino, and I pass this over to Anu.
Mahalo kumu. So we're gonna do a little mini talk story debrief breakout session. So we want you folks to pair up maybe small groups, like 2, max 3 people, and really reflect on and share how your foundation, so where you are from, who you belong to, right? Remember those 2 questions at the beginning, no hea mai oi, na vai oi. So how has your foundation shaped who you are as a person? Take out mental health provider. How has that foundation shaped who you are as a person, right? And how has this contributed to your kulana and your kuleana? So how has that foundation contributed and shaped to the roles and the responsibilities, the privilege that you have? Okay, so take about 10 minutes. We'll come back at 10:20 and we'll debrief as a larger hui. Okay, so just find a pakana next to you, talk story a little bit, and then we'll come back.
And we'll talk about going karaoke tonight.
Okay, let's wrap up our conversations. We're gonna come back to our session. I think we have time for just a quick share out. Does anybody want to share something that they noticed or that came up for them as they were talking story?
Sorry, I know people don't like this, but get plenty.
One of the things that really popped out when my partner was sharing with me is she grew up in a haole world and she didn't understand who she was.
Can you speak up, please?
One of the things that my partner shared with me in the kuka was that she grew up in a haole world and she didn't know who she was. So that's a profound statement of how we're identifying with ourselves. Yeah?
Yeah, mahalo.
Mm-hmm. Mahalo.
Anybody else?
Aloha. This young lady, Kehao, that's sitting next to me, I never knew who she was until this moment. And she's become a part of my ohana because she's a mentor. She's been mentoring people as a teacher, educating, now as vice principal of Kamehameha Middle School. She's mentored a lot of people, and she has a heart that cares about people. And that's something that I really took a liking to this young lady. And now I can go home, tell my wife I found another one. Another member of our family. Right? Yeah. Well, you see, you got to know what your mind is now. See, I figured out people real quick. But no, thank you so much, Kiao, for sharing with you.
one of the things that I talked a lot about with my partner, so I work for the University of Hawaii in Manoa, and I grew up and born and raised on the island of Oahu in Kaneohe. I had the privilege of going to Kamehameha schools and learning about my Hawaiian language, culture, and history, so that when I went to school on the continent, I felt really grounded and rooted in my identity and who I was. I ended up becoming a voice for many, not only Native Hawaiian communities, but within the Pacific Islander community, both in California and in Oregon. And I think because of that foundation, because living with my mother's family, all of my grandparents and aunties and uncles living all together, that really grounded who I was so that I could face a lot of the racial reckoning that's happening in the continent.
Mahalo.
Hi, Adrienne. Yeah, for me, yeah, my grandmother for sure is the one, but I never ever thought of that as where do I belong? And in thinking about that, I didn't realize how much she saw me and did for me, and that created a belonging that I didn't even know was even really there. And in talking to my partner, the future looks really bright. And I think the other thing too is, our kumu passed away. My kids is kumu, and so it's been kind of a struggle to really be back in the Hawaiian community. So I was actually nervous to come. I asked for prayer so that I would come and not feel not belonging, I guess, or not kind of out of touch. And so my daughter and I, we were just talking about, we really should find a halau and not should, but we want to find a halau and really get to know the language better. Because even just you saying some of the words, I'm going, oh, I know that word. Oh, I know that word. I'm like going, oh. So it's just re-inspired me to really get more grounded in who I really am and realizing that I'm already grounded in it just through knowing the language and the foundational meaning of it. So thank you for being here and allowing me to really think and be with, what my kumu and not and well actually my kupuna really have done and laid the groundwork for me and my family moving forward, and all of us really, all our kupuna, right? Anyway, thanks.
Mahalo.
We're going to move over to the last cool word. But before I do that, I just want to say mahalo to all of you who shared. One of the things that you just shared that I never thought about who I belong to is really important for us to think about, right? Because if we don't take the time to bring people with us into our spaces. And Anu will talk more about that. But mahalo for sharing, because, we do what we do, and we say the things we say because somebody said it a long time ago or somebody did it a long time ago, and it's still showing up in us. And that we call the velo. Yeah, the velo. The family traits, the characteristics, and this isn't in our script, but I just want to talk about it a little bit. I don't know, I always deviate, like, okay, Kuma, where are you going? I'm just gonna go. She okay with that. But there's so many things, right? Not just the age is different, but the way. But I gotta tell you about this because the velo shows up even when you don't realize it does. So in one of our trainings, we do one on velo, family traits, characteristics that continue to show up. And one of our participants said, I never really thought about Ekumu. He said, my family were fishermen. They were Lāhui here on Maui. And he says, and I always thought I lost that velo. I'm not a fisherman. I don't even live near the ocean. He says, I live in the mountain now. He says, and I just felt like I don't even clean fish. I don't have a pole. I don't have a net. I don't have anything. He said, but after the session, he realized that he has the traits of the fisherman. What are those traits? You can sit still. You're observant. You can pay attention a long time. You get big faith, right? Because you know when you put the line down, you don't know what's going on under there. You can have the best lure, the best bait, you can have all of this, but only Keakua taking care of what's happening underneath, just like farmers, right? You can plant, you can make fertilizer, you can do all this awesome stuff, but under the ground, that's Keakua. So you gotta have faith. And he says, and I realized that that's my velo. I do have the velo. So you think about that, right? What is your velo showing up? So anyway, the last of the cool words, kupono. Kupono, and many of us who speak Hawaiian understand kupono as being proper, fitting. You see it there as upright, proper, appropriate. But we like to think about it as knowing when to say, how to say, what to do, how to do when you're in the space, right? How to read the room. Having that sixth sense that's paying attention to na'au stuff, right? Not just looking and seeing the physical, but actually being able to get yourself in sync with someone because you know what's happening there. That's a tough one if you don't work from the na'au. Because if you only work from the po'o, then you only look and try to figure out what's going on. So I always say, bottom line is you got to read the room, right? Read the room. We all sitting like this, and somebody walks in and starts dancing through the room and making plenty noise. We all be like, what's going on there, right? Well, what you doing, right? And it happens all the time. Anu has a great story. Tell us a story about the re-entry and the person who never know how to act. Oh, sorry. These things are important because we know it all the time. I look it out here. You're plenty of Hawaiians. You guys understand when they don't know how to act, yeah? Okay, go ahead, Anu. Tell the story.
I just saw Michelle, and Michelle was there with me that one day, but it was the first day of re-entry back in Lahaina as people were coming back to their homes, and we were there providing emotional support, mental health support. And there was a woman, so sweet, from the continent, and she, as we were walking through the street, she just started walking onto people's properties, right? And the intention was good, right? She was going to check in with people, but Michelle and I were standing on the street, like looking at each other, like, oh, I don't.
You tell her. No, you tell her.
Yeah. Right? Because there's just kupono, right? There's a time and place. There's a way to conduct yourself. There's a way not to conduct yourself. And it's really reading the room, right? You don't see anybody else just charging onto somebody else's property. That's a really intimate, vulnerable space, right? Not appropriate in that moment. So great example of kupono.
Or kupono ole. Yeah. So, it's that, right? And then whose kuleana is it, right? So one of the things that we, the obvious one is when you come to somebody's hale, you see all the slippers outside the door. If you just look at all those slippers and continue to walk in with your shoes, aole kupono, right? Because you didn't read the room. You did as you please. And we have to always recognize who's the host, because the host gets to lay down the rules, right? Not the guest. Except that us as hosts, sometimes Hawaiians, we make room for that, right? So I'll give you an example. So our neighbor, we live in Hawaiian homes, Waiahu, and our neighbor's mom, who's not Hawaiian, but was raised here, she lived here for decades, came over to visit. Our house was brand new, okay? And she came walking in with her shoes. And my son says, Mom, you going to say something? And I was saying, okay, number one, good son, you didn't tell the kupuna, because that's your role. You don't know kupuna, don't say nothing. Tell me, yeah. So now I have to deal with this, because this kupuna is like 30 years older than me, right? And I'm like, I got to tell her, because this is my house, right? So she'd have guessed, and I would have hoped that she would have known, and she could have been kupono coming in, but now I got to tell her. So, no, Auntie, you take off your shoes. She goes, oh, yeah. She takes off her shoes. Could have been met with, no, I like to wear my shoes. In which case, I'll just have to pick her up and show her out of my house. But I mean, these things, right? How do you move into spaces? All of us need to think about that. Because we're moving in other people's spaces sometimes, and they got ways that they do things. And us as Kanaka, that's part of who we are. But we got to remember when it's our space and how to move in our space too. What is right in your space? So reflect on a time when you didn't read the room. You ever had a moment like that when you didn't read the room? One of the examples I like to use is on the beach, right? See all these local people not in the water, they're all outside. And there's that one person charging into the water. And you're all like, he didn't read the room. He didn't read the beach, right? Those things are important because that is not our work. And we sit in this space with our na'au. What's happening, right? If somebody is eha, we should be able to read that. If somebody is komaha, we should be able to read that. If somebody is happy, we definitely want to read that, yeah? But be in this space with others. So, we're going to talk, Anu's going to share a little bit about what happens when people weren't kupono. Yeah? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna get a little po'o for a second. I'm gonna talk a little bit about historical trauma and resilience for Native Hawaiians. So when we think about trauma, people often think about, I call it trauma within the lifespan. So they think about abuse, loss, neglect. We call these things adverse childhood experiences, right? There's a study called ACEs. I see a lot of nods, so a lot of people know about ACEs, right? If you don't know about ACEs, it's a really fascinating study that was done by Kaiser that connected trauma in childhood to health and well-being later in life. So somebody who has, more trauma, more ACEs in their childhood, we may, not guarantee, but we may see more impacts to their physical health and their well-being as they get older. And that seems like it would make sense, right? Like you go through hard times as a child, it's going to impact you later in life. But 30, 40, 50 years ago, that wasn't necessarily common knowledge in our field. So what I love about this pyramid here, this is from the CDC, it also highlights the historical trauma and social conditions beneath that. So when we think about trauma, we can't just think about the trauma that occurs in somebody's lifespan. We have to think deeper than that. We have to think before somebody's current lifespan. So there's a lot of really, really fascinating research about historical trauma. A lot of the groups that have been studied are Holocaust survivors, survivors of the Japanese internment camps, Native American groups. And what the research has shown us is that you don't have to have gone through that initial traumatizing event to have trauma symptoms or impacts later in life. So really fascinating and horrifying when you think about it, right? So generations later, survivors of the Holocaust, right, their mo'opuna, generations later, we're seeing these negative impacts. And so we think, why? Like, how did that happen? When we think about Native Hawaiians and what this means for us, if we just sit back for a second and reflect on the trauma that we as a people have experienced, it's immense, right? We have experienced the loss of land, the loss of language, the loss of culture. And it's not just the loss of these things, but there was a systematic attempt to erase who we were as a people. That's really heavy when you think about it. And so what does that look like today? How does that show up today? Is it then surprising to us that we as Native Hawaiians are overrepresented in a lot of different areas. We're overrepresented in looking at incarceration rates, substance abuse rates, domestic violence. We're overrepresented in the child welfare system. And so why does this happen, right? So we know how trauma impacts a person, right? So if somebody goes through something traumatizing, they're more likely to experience, having a hard time coping with something, right? We call it like maladaptive behaviors, but hard time coping, right? So if you take one example, maybe somebody is struggling with substance use. Think about substance use and how it impacts a family. And then think about if you have multiple families who experience impacts like that. And then pretty soon you have communities who have experienced trauma. And so the work that we do collectively focuses on promoting reconnecting with our cultural identity, regrounding ourselves in who we are, because we know that developing and fostering a strong cultural identity, reconnecting to these losses that our people have experienced, is going to cultivate resiliency and is going to allow us to heal the trauma of generations before us. And it's something very important and very crucial to the work that we do. So reconnecting with that kuleana that we have is healing the trauma of previous generations. So for example, when we take our kids to the lo'i, so wonderful way, right, that we can connect with our cultural identity and our kupuna of the past. On a surface level, we know that the aina is very grounding. It helps to teach our keiki about healthy foods and having access to healthy foods. But on a deeper level, we know that engaging in the practices of our kupuna helps us to heal the previous generations, right? So there's something much deeper that's going on. So when we engage in activities like that, especially if we're taking our keiki and our opio to these places, it's important that we set the stage up for that we set the stage up so that their na'au can connect to the type of work, the type of hana that's being done in those spaces. We absolutely need to help our ohana and our communities to reground, reconnect, and re-identify with their culture, because that's the only way that we're going to heal the trauma that we collectively as a people have experienced. And while we have experienced a significant amount of trauma, it's also really critical to remember that we are an incredibly resilient people. The fact that we are sitting here in this room today shows that we are resilient. Our kupuna, we're incredibly resilient, otherwise we wouldn't be here. And that the resiliency of our kupuna runs through us all, right? So Kumu and I know, we all know that we don't show up today as individuals, right? We show up with our kupuna, with a long lineage of kupuna that are standing alongside us in everything that we do. And that is the same for every one of you, right? So when you come here today, you come here with your kupuna, your kumu, all of your ancestors that are there alongside you as you interface and engage with everybody that you encounter. And so, that's something that, we really highlighted to the groups as we were doing our training, that, when you come to our island and you come into our communities, to engage with our people the way that you would engage with somebody's kupuna, because they're right there alongside them. And so that grace and that reverence and that gentleness that you would encounter somebody with, their kupuna, that's how we expect that you engage with them as well. Do you have anything else you want to add about resiliency? No? Okay.
So yeah, see, I jumped the gun and started talking about velo, but this is the section on velo. Yeah. Because when Anu talks about resiliency, it's inside of us. And if you ask our kupuna, when were you resilient? Tell me not that our kupuna would look at us like, what? No, you just do what you got to do, right? And that was how they were resilient. They didn't pour over, oh my gosh, well, I did this and that. No, you just do what you got to do. And when I think about, someone like my mom, she was the oldest of 15. And there was a huge flood that came through Moanalua Valley. And her kuleana was to carry every child younger than her across that raging, rushing stream. And that story that she would tell, she would cry every time she told the story. She didn't tell it very often. But when she did, it was like going back to that moment. And then it made me understand why she was so overprotective. I just felt like she was always like making sure where you was, what you was doing, where, making sure you're okay, taking care, mothering, smothering, mothering. But it was because she almost lost the ones that she was responsible for. And so when you think about that, right, there's this velo that comes through. Some velo are good, some velo not so good. And we have the kuleana to figure out what are the velo that are showing up in us. I tell a story about my grandmother. So she was hapai, ready to hana, and she was working in the lo'i because at the time my grandfather was out on the ocean. And so she had to take care of all these kids. And there was nobody else to come take care of kids. So she was out there in the lo'i, hukikalo. And then she felt the pains. And so she called my mom, again, who was the oldest, and said, come on, makaukau no kahano. And so she steps out of the lo'i. And there on the kuauna, my mother brought this, I forget what it was, but it was something really heavy so that my grandmother could push, hano, clean up everything back in the lo'i. My mother was the one to take care of the baby. When I heard that story, I thought, what? That's the people I come from. That's my line. The kind can hana and jump back, I was like, oh, okay, I got this. So when I had my youngest daughter, she was born 2 days before Christmas. She was supposed to come in January. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's here. We invited everybody to our house for Christmas Eve. And what are we going to do? My husband's like, it's okay. You had a baby. I'm sure we could tell them you had the baby and they're not going to come. I was like, oh no, I can do this. Okay. So Hannah, within 12 hours, leave the hospital. He's like, you ain't taking the baby into Sam's Club. I go, okay, well, you take care of the baby. I go inside Sam's, buy everything, gotta buy everything. I'm just so proud of myself. I'm like, my gosh, my grandmother did this, jump back in the lorry. I just jumped into Sam's Club. So I go, I grab all the stuff, I pack it all up, get inside, and then I see my niece, and her and I were up at the same time. She's like, Auntie, something looked different. I go, yeah, I gave birth. She goes, when? I just saw you the other day. I go, yeah, yesterday. She's like, wow. I go, right? I go, but we can party at my house tonight, so I got to go home. She's like, okay. Well, there's a photo of that night with me and the baby lettuce. And I thought to myself, I don't think I got the velo. I really tried. But you hear these stories of your kupuna, and you think about who you are. We had one of our kumu tell us a story about his grandmother. She was there when the bombs were dropping in Germany, and she had to flee. And she left and ended up in being raised by somebody else. And then this is his grandmother. And so he said he never thought about her story impacting him. How many of us do that? How many of us actually sit back and look at the stories of our kupuna and recognize the impact it's had on us and the way we engage in spaces, the way we interact with each other, the way we are? Because it does. And especially, I say this especially to our young people. Take the time to talk to kupuna. because you will find out things about yourself that you never knew. You could have answers. When I think about my father who passed away when I was 19, I wish I had asked him so many questions. My cousin is sitting here. And there's so much that we don't know about the side that connects us. I wish we had asked the questions. So I implore all of you young people, and actually all of you, if your kupuna are around, ask the questions. Because those questions is information. It's information for us to know us and what we bring to the table. Every table that we sit at. And all we engage in the kuleana that we have. Yeah. And today, you know, when you're that young, 19 or below, you're really not thinking about all the stuff that's coming up. But you know, now at this age, and I look at my former opuna, I want to just pour everything into them. I want them to know everything about me, because I don't want anybody else telling them my story, because they might tell a story that's totally not me. I like them to know the truth. I'm telling the truth. But you know, that's your mo'olelo. Yeah. And that's the velo that comes through. So I think we have another breakout. Yeah.
Aye. Okay. So we want you guys to go back into your small groups. We're going to take just 10 minutes. And we want you folks to talk story about what stories of resilience does your ohana hold? How did your kupuna overcome adversity? What was the velo of your ohana? Okay? What is it that allows your ohana to be resilient, your kupuna? Okay, let's wrap up our conversations, and we're going to come back. Okay, does anybody want to share maybe a highlight from your talk story session?
So one of the things that we always say is, you know, mai kaula'i na iwi o nā kupuna. We use that olelo no eo often because we do these deep dives. We ask you to share in the breakouts, but we also ask that you don't share things that you think is too much to share. If your kupuna would not want you to share, then don't share. Okay, so just have, you know, be conscious of that we don't ask you to share anything that your ohana wouldn't want you to, but we would like you to share something today. So.
Aloha. I don't really have a story, but all I was thinking about is all the strong wahine in my line. I think resiliency is in my family, and I think mostly in our culture is mostly wahine that really carry and facilitate the resilience and, you know, hold space for people to heal and like this, like, you know, wahine. I think that's how my kupuna and I also, you know, Lahaina, because I'm from Lahaina, being displaced now. I also carry a generation of displacement in Lahaina because my kupuna had to leave Lahaina. I can't share that, but they had to move to Oahu. My mommy coming back here and us reconnecting to our Aina Kulaiwi, it really breaks the generational trauma that we hold in our family. And it all has to do with the kupuna wahine in my family. So that's just what I wanted to share. Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Aloha mai kako. I just want to share, I come from a long line of resilience. My grandparents in the 1920s, they left Oahu and they moved to the continent. My grandma, we found her name on the Lurleen ship as an alien. She was labeled, she was an alien. And they were going to, I think they used to call it Califrisco at that time. My grandpa, we couldn't find his name there, but the story is he may have been one of the stowaways. But for whatever reason, these teenagers left. We still don't know the reason. And all they took with them was their music. So they played in one of the circuses from California all the way to New York. And I can just imagine the resistance that they felt, being it was predominantly, you know, them by themselves. But they had all their children. My father was born in New York. And then for whatever reason, they decided to come back home after like about 31 years. I was a year old. But when I came home, didn't take long, my grandma died, like in about 2 years. And she was the strength of the family. And then also, so that's my my Hawaiian grandma. But they also brought my young 17-year-old mother with them when she came, and she had me when she was young. And my mom faced a lot of adversities, and she's a small haole lady, and she came, but you know, she went through, and I don't think she mind me saying, a lot of infidelity, domestic violence. So me growing up, that's all I knew. But I also knew that every time she stood up and she shook it off as she moved forward. So my mom is 82 years today. 82 years old. She lives in Las Vegas now with my sister. But when I look back on why sometimes I'm like that, I'm resilient, knock me down, I'll get back up, I'll keep moving on. But after hearing you folks today, I come from that line of women. They're strong women and strong men too. But I just wanted to share. Also, when I started kindergarten, I only knew how to speak how they speak on the continent. We didn't know Pidgin. All of our cousins, we all came from the same place. And then I was bullied in kindergarten because I spoke some way, and they said, it's not like that. That's not how you're supposed to talk. And I'd go home and I'd take words home, and mom said, you're not supposed to speak like that. So I was a little bit confused when I kindergarten. But you know, even that, by the time I got out of kindergarten, I was more Pidgin than anybody else in the whole school. But that's resilience. I'm going to keep moving forward. And then I had an accident where something fell into my face, and I had this big scar on my face. I was like 5 years old. I'm already kind of being bullied because I talk funny. But then I come to school and I have all these stitches in my face. It looked like a centipede crawling up my face. And I said, that's okay, I'll get through this. But I did. So here I am all these years later, but it's because of the people that I come from. And I'm so grateful for that.
Mahalo.
That's it.
I'm the first generation to graduate at UH Manoa with my degree in Hawaiian Studies. Thank you. But I think after you graduate, you leave that community and you go back home to people who don't speak Hawaiian, who don't learn that kind of stuff. And then a couple of years ago, my daughter got punished for speaking Hawaiian, and we were taught that. And so I think I think the generational trauma of our people, it impacted us, especially when you choose the path to go to Kula and take your keiki there. It's hard. You go through like crying every night, doing homeworks with them, or hearing they get punished. Like, what do? You're navigating this path all alone. And so I think for some of us who choose to go that route, I think we're very resilient, and knowing our, having that foundation, like what was taught in school at Hawaii Nui Ekela, our identity, and them keeping or strengthening that while we're with our community there, really helped us to get back out into the world, so that when we do cry and we do feel alone, we still have that to go to, you know? And so I just thought I'd share that with everybody, because I know a lot of people go through that nowadays, and we're all here, and we just gotta know our foundation and who we come from, our kumus and our families and stuff.
Mahalo nui for sharing. You know, we all have to lift each other up. Yeah. You know, on one side you're getting told, go school, it's a good thing. And then you go to school and you come back to your family and they tell you, oh, you think you're smarter now? You know, so we've been there and looking right at one of my bestest buddies, my bestest hoa, who we would talk to groups of kids about this, that you have to be able to navigate your way back. Yeah? So it's it's never a one-way trip, right? You go on your va'a, and then you have to come back. But the things that you saw when you went, you got to take back and share with the ones that didn't get to see. So we all have that huaka'i that we get on. We go, we see things that are like, wow. That's not just for us to see. That's for us to take back to the ones who didn't get to see. So that maybe one day they like get on that same va'a and go to and see. And we just keep on taking it back. And one of the things that when I went on to school, before I went to UH, my grandmother told me, she said, baby, you go, you learn how they play the game so that we can win. I was like, all right. A lot of killer this way, like lay down and die. And, we've been blessed to have seen what we've seen. We take the good, we learn about the things that don't work for us, and then we try to rise up every day. Yeah, that's what we do. I'm just going to share with you, this is on a personal note. The word mana wahine, we hear it a lot, people saying, and they say, oh, you want mana wahine. That term is not Hawaiian. So I just wanted to put that out there. That's a Maori term. They use mana wahine. We don't use it. If you go and do the research, you cannot find anywhere that mentions that term, mana wahine. Because mana no belong to just wahine or just kane. It's everywhere, in everything, all over. And it comes from a power that none of us have. And so I just want to put that out there just in case you are one of those people who like wear mana wahine shirts. I just let you know. Okay. Oh, moving on. We've talked a lot about kupuna, our mo'olelo, the words, those three words, right? Kulana, kuleana, kupono. And then there's this last one, kupuna, right? But they came first long ago. And so these are actually, on this side is my side. That's my dad at a very young age, looking all dapper there with his papale. And my mom. He was Hawaiian German, she was Hawaiian Portuguese, and then you get me. And these are my three kids. And I have kuleana to them. I have kuleana to all of them and the mo'opuna that have come to ensure that they will know the mo'olelo, the resilience that they have. People like to sit in that trauma space, and it's not that we should ignore it, but it's the thing that's made us stronger and stronger, and we keep on showing up. And you know how we know we're resilient? We're still here. We're still here. We keep on showing up. So don't ever stop showing up. When I drove up and I saw all those high, I thought, we're in the right space now. And see us. Yeah. And we just keep on showing up. Yeah, do what we got to do because we owe it to these people right here. And Anu has her side.
Mahalo kumu. So here you see on the far right, I'm standing with, those are my parents, my mom and my dad. My dad is proud with his Molokai shirt. That's where my mom is from. I was born there. That's where most of our ohana is from or lived. But I wanted to talk about my dad, who is Haole. He is a very significant person to me because it is because of him that I have become grounded in Ike Kupuna. I had a very different upbringing than Kumu did. So I did not grow up with a strong cultural identity. It wasn't until I got accepted to Kamehameha at Kapalama and boarded there when I was 11 years old that I began to connect to my Hawaiian culture and my Hawaiian identity. And my 7th grade year, we had the option to choose an elective. And I don't remember what I wanted to take, but it wasn't Hawaiian language. And my dad he made me. So he said, if you're gonna go to Kamehameha, you're gonna learn to speak. You're gonna learn to Olelo Hawaii. And my mom was a little indifferent about it, but he was adamant about it. He said, at least take 1 year. And so I took 1 year. I had Kumu Lilinoi Ka'ahanui, who was my favorite kumu. And because of that, I took Hawaiian for all 6 years that I was there. And it is because of that that I have now recognized, sorry, it gets me emotional every time, but it's why I have recognized the kuleana that I have to ensure that my two girls have a very different upbringing than I did. And so that's who I wanted to share about today as we wrap up. My father and my two keiki, who are going to have a very different upbringing than I did.
Yeah. So ola naivi, the bones live, and they live through us. So we're going to open this time to all of you to ask whatever questions you want to ask, because we're happy to share. But please know that what you've seen here, what you've experienced here, is actually a very small part of a 6-week session that we typically run. And there's people over here that have sat through those 6 weeks. And then we run another 6-week session. We have 3 total that we run. And, so there's a lot more that we do. We try to just give you the best of what we could give within the time that we're given. And hopefully you've enjoyed it. But please, we're sitting here to hear whatever questions you might have.
Or mana'o. There's mana'o.
Or mana'o.
Can you join the 6-week session? Do you have to be like a practitioner or something? Can you be like regular?
Can you be like regular? Yeah. If you're interested, we can give you our information, and then when we have a course that maybe you can jump into, we'll let you know. Yeah, because what we've done is open it to child service providers. Well, yeah. Is that what they're called? Yeah. I don't know, because there's like social workers, there's welfare providers, there's all that. But them, as well as Department of Education, those are the groups that we've worked with. So if got people outside of that and they want to come, we can make room. Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you. I speak soft too. So, mahalo nui for this, yeah. Interestingly, especially with the events of the fires happening, one of the roles, and even with some friends of mine, and when we talk about like ike kupuna, and some of us have these gifts, yeah. A lot of us been receiving visions. Some profound ones too that we're gonna probably share. I'm gonna share, and particularly the one too, Kumu, because one of the visions that I've received said to share it with you, and so I'm hoping we can make time because they revealed it really clearly that this needs to be shared with you. And it's beautiful for the Lāhui and for Hawaii. Yeah. When we talk about identity and this hololoa and whatnot, it's for me, I think, one of the things that I'm learning too is how we share in these spaces and how important gatherings are like this to be able to share and kuka and stuff like that. So this is wonderful because it hasn't been, or I haven't been a part of anything that was this, in depth of understanding. So mahalo.
Mahalo, yeah. That's, and Anu and I always say, and we can definitely make some time because now you got me all nearly like, what? Somebody was talking to you about me. Yeah. And the kind of people that we don't get to see. But But Anu and I always talk about how, we're not here for therapy. Like we try to tell our participants, we're not trying to do therapy with you guys. But what we are doing is opening a space to have conversations. Because like you said, when we do it on our campus, we have people on our campus who have never had these conversations. In the DOD trainings, we had people who said, wow, I've been deployed with this guy 4 times and I've never talked to him about this kind of stuff. But these are the things that we have to talk about because these are the things that connect us. Yeah? Because you can sit with somebody who's not Hawaiian or not anything like you and you start to talk and next thing you know, oh my gosh, we're so alike. We're so alike. And we look for those places where we can converge and where we can find alignment because we're more alike than we are different. And that's the thing that this world has taught us to look at our differences as opposed to look at the things that we can say, okay, I got you. I got you. And the places where I don't get you, okay, well, maybe we can work on that, but maybe we can just respect the fact that you're not like me and I'm not like you, and that's okay. Can we do that? But we have to have the conversation because if not, then there's a lot of assumptions that are made. Yeah. And I'm like ace for that, I don't know you. I've made assumption, judging. You can hear all this stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Hi, aloha.
Oh, you get that.
Luan Mahiki Langford from Oliho Molokai. I wanted to ask you if this program is something that you guys have reached out to the incarcerated folks, especially our people. So that hasn't been a group that we've worked with yet. I mean, we have. We never know where this journey will take us.
We only thought we were going to work at school. And next minute, we're like all over the place. I thought, oh my gosh, I know we're taking our show on the road. No. But
no, we haven't specifically worked with incarcerated individuals, though we did have opportunities to work with parents. We may have opportunities to work with students. And so we're really, we do feel passionate about Olaloa and about providing people in general with opportunities to connect to their na'au and share these stories and better understand the mo'olelo of their kupuna, recognizing that we all have a kuleana, right, to propel this type of work as it heals the historical trauma of our previous generation. So,
mahalo. But if you would want us to come, we don't have a problem with that. Otherwise, I was like, oh my gosh, where are we going now? But she says that about me, but I say it about her too. Like, what did you volunteer us for? Okay, we just go. We go because, we're controlled by something way greater than us. Yeah.
Aloha mai, my name is Shannon. I'm from Lahaina. And I just wanted to share how grateful I am for this opportunity to be here in this little workshop. Because I think it got me questioning, all the questions that you guys had up here. Being a displaced family from Lahaina, it made me think about the things that my kupuna went through, right? How did they move through those things? What kind of things that they did to be resilient, because they were resilient, right? There were fires before in Lahaina, not at this great magnitude, but there were. And so what are the things they did to be resilient enough to talk about what happened and to move forward? And so I think about the velo and what kind of traits do I have within myself to be able to move through that trauma, move through the all the things that we're going through, to be able to heal through that, and not sit. I heard you say not sit in that. And that was really important for me because it is hard sometimes not to stay stagnant. Yeah, I can sit in my stuff for a really long time sometimes, and I'm like, but that's not what my kupuna did. They were so resilient. They moved from all the different things that they went to, and the most important thing that they did is they shared their mo'olelo. Even if it's the simple sharing a recipe with me, or, telling me a story of who my grandpa was, or who, my grandma was, and all those different things. And so mahalo for bringing those questions up, because it makes me think of what is my responsibility, what is my kuleana. And like I said, especially in this time, like this fire has actually brought a fire within me to think, oh, like why am I here? Who am I? And who are my kupuna to be able to help me to move through these spaces? Because I don't just bring myself, I also bring my kupuna with me. So thank you for that reminder.
Aloha. What would be your biggest advice to move forward with the spirit of aloha without being stuck in anger?
I'm going to put on my hopekahu hat now, because this is really, honestly, the only way that I have my personal self has been able to move forward, to overcome the anger, because there was a day when that's what propelled me, was anger. And then you get to the point where, I heard our sisters talking about, you just feel like you're fighting this all the time. And recently I had a young woman, she's here today, not in our room, but I saw her. And she had called me to say, Kumo, I just feel like, people don't understand why we want to hold on to our language, why we want to educate our children in Hawaiian. And what did you do? Because I know that you fought this fight. And I'm like, oh, it's not past tense, sister. We're still fighting the fight, okay? It's coming to terms with the fact that you know stuff. You know stuff that people don't know. And understanding ignorance. And I'm not saying stupidity. I'm talking about ignorance. People don't know. And so you got to forgive and you got to educate. And to me, those two things go together all the time for me, is forgive and educate. Understand where they're coming from, why they say stupid things like, why you teach your kids Hawaiian? They're going to be stupid. Why you speak to them in Hawaiian? They're not going to amount to anything. That's ignorance. And that ignorance is not only outside the Lāhui, it's inside the Lāhui. It's inside my family. And it doesn't stop because they don't know. They've never experienced what we've experienced. And that's why Anu and I do what we do, is because we need more and more people to understand and get educated about who we are so that they don't say ignorant things like that. And if I can get to that point where I can understand that that's what's motivating them to say stuff, is because they're ignorant, then I can forgive that. And I can take the kuleana, now I can put the kumu hat on and educate. Because if not, I get really angry. And there was a time when, one of my first classes, when I was 17 years old at UH Manoa, was with Haunani K. Trask. And if you've ever taken a class from her at 17, you're not really prepared for somebody to tell you. You just have to grab your gun and get to the airport and just, and I was just like, oh, I don't even know what? But the more I listened to her, I came from Aya High School. It was all love. Everybody's love. It's all nice. It's 70s, we're all like, peace. So I came into that space like very naive about what we had been through as Hawaiians. And she put that all in the front. This is what's happening. This is what we've gone through. And what are you going to do? And all I thought was, I'm just going to teach a little Hawaiian because that's what my grandma said. And then I realized, no, this was my way. So everybody in the Lāhui got to figure out what is your kuleana to hold this Lāhui up. Everybody, every Hawaiian, there's not a single Hawaiian who should think that that's not me. As every single one of us has kuleana, no matter what it is. Something as manini as whatever that is, that your gift is, you do. You do the best that you can do because every Hawaiian who does well lifts the Lāhui. Every single one. So fuel that anger someplace positive, because that's the scary thing. If people only get angry and they don't know where to go with it, then we get into trouble. We find the overrepresentation in the wrong places. But if we take what we are so upset about and navigate that into the right place, we can do good for our Lāhui. And that's our kuleana. Not just the responsibility, the right and the privilege of being Hawaiian is to be able to lift us up every day. Say the right thing, do the right thing, be kupono in your spaces. Okay, we got time for one more question, and we have a little announcement coming up. Oh, in the back. Hey. Hi, girl. You'd slip in without me seeing. Ellie.
Aloha kako.
Aloha.
Aloha Ekela. I just want to say something really quick. I met Ekela 100 years ago when she...
We was -5.
So anyway, what happened was the federal government issued through Inouye's office, they had a federal program where all the Hawaiians, like myself, who had never had an opportunity to learn Hawaiian, to speak Hawaiian. Remember that, Ekela? And so she taught me, and I love her to this day. My olelo is my kai, ano mai kai. But what happened was she told me this, Auntie Lei, whenever you go, only speak Hawaiian, right? Only speak Hawaiian. And so you remember you told us put up little stickums. If you're going to do this, put stickums, and you do that, and you learn Hawaiian. So I said, oh my gosh, she only wants me to speak Hawaiian. So what I did, we're talking about anger. I was very angry. And because I said, look at all our Lāhuis. They're in the prisons, and they can't really learn Hawaiian, right? So because I'm a therapist, and I'm also a lawyer, I went into the prisons, and I conducted ho'oponopono sessions. And I only spoke Hawaiian. So I got fired. Actually, I got laid off. Sued the prison system. And to this day, the reason you have Hawaiian in the prisons and Hawaiian history is because I sued the Department of Public Safety. And it's because of her. So Ted Sakai, who was the superintendent of Department of Public Safety, said, Lei, thank you so much for suing us. Because if you don't know, because in our Constitution, in 1978, Hawaiian leaders like myself changed the Constitution, and we amended it to put Hawaiian as official language. And me being a lawyer at that time and a therapist knew that I was going to win. And my cousin Charlie Maxwell was head of the Civil Rights Commission. Lived in Maui. Anybody know Charlie Maxwell? Okay. So I called Charlie and said, cuz, I got laid off. He said, you didn't get fired. I said, no, I'm hoping for that, right? Because I set him up. Because in order to enforce your rights, you got to sue them. Okay, so to this day, our Lāhui in prison can speak Hawaiian, can learn Hawaiian and history. So she got me angry. That will be right there. Thank you, Ekela. Aloha.
Hey, mahalo. Mahalo, everyone, for coming to our session. But before we close, we want to introduce one of our favorite hoa, who is also a Maui girl, Venus Rossetti Medeiros, who's going to make a really important announcement that is very important for our Lāhui.
Aloha. Yeah, this is really important. And look, the buzzer going off already. Okay, so real quick, we have this initiative that came out of, it's a legislative bill that came out. So it's an initiative that came out from Senate Bill 295 and House Bill 1385, for those of you who want to check it out. But it's establishing a working group to look at the current child welfare system. Now, I have a fact sheet here that you guys can come and pick up, but this is really important. Over the last 7 years, okay, no difference for Native Hawaiians in the child welfare system. 45% of all of the children in child welfare are Native Hawaiian. Now, that is tragic for our Lāhui. You also see here on this fact sheet that 53% of the children who are emancipated out of foster care, which means that they're aging out of foster care, are Native Hawaiian. I'm the CEO now. I left Maui to work in Oahu, and I ask Kyoko, why you sent me Oahu? Why you sent me Oahu? And now I know why. I've been there for 1.5 years, and I've been working with a group called Nakama Ahaloa. It's a network of people who have come together and said, no more. We have to do something about this system. So what we're doing is this working group, we got this bill passed, and I'm really, really, really excited that we have 1 year to come together and get as much mana'o as we can across the Pai'aina from people who have lived experience, people who are concerned about this issue. We're going to go around, do focus groups, get your mana'o in, and we're going to transform the system, because what the system is doing is it's hurting our children, our families. This system was created in the time of colonization. It was created to make us feel like many of the other systems that we have. So we're starting right now with child welfare. We're going to transform it to make it where we can bring back ike kupuna in the way that we raise our children, because we never had children to be raised by the state. It's for us. And so we're bringing back the power to community. So please, if you guys are wanting to be involved, you want to see what we're going to be working on, we're going to sponsor a breakfast at Maui's Finest.
At my house.
Yeah, at her house. What's your address? We're gonna do a quick breakfast at Maui's Finest, Maui Beach Hotel. So Malama Ohana, it will be hosting the breakfast. Please come. We'll have it at 7:00 in the morning. Pick up your breakfast. We'll talk a little bit about this. And if not, please, there's a QR code down below. Please scan it, take the quick survey, and let us know if you want to be more involved in this initiative, okay?
What day is breakfast?
Thursday. Thank you. Thursday.
Don't tell the day. That's how you control a crowd.
Thursday at Maui Beach, right there. Oh, sorry, not Maui Beach. Look, wrong information to give you guys. Tante's at 7:00. Tante's, okay? Come eat breakfast, learn more about what we're doing. This Thursday. Bella. Thursday. Yes, but it's 7:00 till 8. No start till 9:00. Come in the morning, eat breakfast, and come over here for the convention. Okay? Okay, mahalo.
Mahalo, everybody.